Hey, and welcome to this new version of YAG, that's version 0.11, and it's a huge one because it brings a new major and even central feature in YAG. We can now compute terrains, sculpt them, and paint them. The technology behind those new terrains is called Voxels, and in fact this whole feature is such a huge topic that there are no less than 8 tutorial videos to explain how to use it. Also, because the new terrains can really be in 3 dimensions, I had to entirely rewrite the pawns displacement system, and so there's also a new tutorial for that. So all in all, we now have a brand new 3D pawns displacement system with its tutorial and a new procedural terrain generation system with its 8 tutorial. Obviously in this video I won't explain anything, I'm just going to quickly show you around, and you will have to go through the tutorials to learn how to use that. So let's start with the displacement. The selection tools have a new look. We can now take off and go full 3D, and this works even when there is no terrain, but obviously when there is a terrain we can just land and run on it. Okay, I won't say anything more about that. There is a full tutorial to show and explain everything. So let's start with the voxel. We are going to start by clearing the terrain, and by the way, there is a new button here to restore the default scene in YAG. Many people requested that, so it's done. So let's start with the voxels. A voxel terrain has 3 main visual properties: its shape, its color, and its foliage, and each of them has its own panel. Okay, so shape, color, and foliage. So let's start with the shape. The principle is quite simple. We choose a function, it's called a noise, then we have a lot of parameters to play with and apply to the function, and when we're done we just apply and we get a new shape for our terrain. Okay, then we can choose its colors by choosing different materials that will give different tones to the terrain. Okay, again we've got a few options, but I'm not explaining anything here in this video. And finally we've got the foliage. We can just choose a type of foliage, and when we apply we are getting what we asked for. Okay, and obviously we can choose different types of foliage which will give very different ambience and mood to the scene. Okay, so because there are so many possibilities, I made a list of pre-selections in which I try to include as much variety as I could in shapes, colors, and foliage. So I'm just going to show you a few of them. We'll start with this desert here. Okay, and then we can also obtain some natural shapes like this 2-dimensional cave system that would make a nice lair for, you know, goblins or beasts or stuff like that. We can also get some more crazy shapes because it's fully 3 dimensions. So you can see here we have some giant caves and it's all very beautiful. What can I show you? There's so many things. Maybe the poplars in summer. Yeah, we've got a few forests, so let me show you a forest of poplars here. So you can see there is a lot to do on this kind of terrain. Okay, and I will finish with the poplar winter forest, which gives a completely different mood, as you can see. And oh, I have to show you the alien jungle, and of course for that one we need a space sky. As you can see, we've got a nice alien vibe going on here. You can put a few monsters in this sort of terrain. It would be really beautiful. Okay, and finally I have to show you my favorite, the cartoon green forest. So just to show you that we can really make a lot of different styles now, using different assets and type of terrains and different parameters for the terrains. You can see now, instead of mountains, we have those round hills, which fits perfectly the cartoony look of the assets of the trees. Okay. Oh, I forgot to come back in blue sky, of course. Yeah, much better like that. Okay, so that's for the procedural part of the voxel. Now, as I told you, we can also paint and sculpt them. So we are going to see that quickly now. Let's come back to the default scene, and all the sculpting tools are in here. So there are lots of them. Of course, I'm not going to explain anything in this video, as I already told. But I'm just going to quickly show you that we just have to enter the edit mode, and we can now start sculpting. Oh, I have to quit the brush mode. So we can add some terrain, as you can see, or we can remove and dig in the existing terrain with no problem. The next thing that we can do is we can use brushes. So there I'm going to enter here this mode. I'm going to look for a hill, and let's take one here. This one. Or maybe no, this one is a nice one if I remember correctly. Yeah. So we can just take any black and white picture and print it on the terrain. I'm going to increase the effect. If I remember correctly, it's needed. Yeah, so you can see we can get very quickly some nice natural looking terrain. But here in this list we have about 500 different pictures, but that's just scratching the surface, because actually we can choose texture from the internet. And to show you that we can do some pretty crazy thing, I have prepared Marilyn portrait here that I'm going to apply, and we're still in 0.3. Okay, and so if I apply it on this terrain, maybe we can go a bit larger. Oh, I remember I had to cut to 0 the fall off, so we can get the full rectangle. So this should do it. I'm going to apply. Okay. Now we can see it looks like we have created a nice cave, you know, for a goblin or a troll or anything like that. But actually, when we take off and look from above, we can recognize the iconic look of Marilyn here. Okay, so we can really do a lot of different and crazy things, and there is no limit, because we can use any picture from the net or from our hard drive. Okay, so next we can paint the terrain. So to demo this to you, I'm going to again start afresh. We're going to add a bit of foliage. The pine forest should be nice. And we're going to create a scene very quickly using those tools that we have here. So I'm going to first paint a clearing by erasing something here. So let's come back in edit mode. I have to put the fall off something like that, maybe. Okay, so we have a clearing. We are going to paint a river. So of course it has to be smaller, maybe 10 meters should be alright. So let's put it like so. Okay, we're going to widen this part a bit, so we can put a nice island at the center of our river. And you can see that already we are getting a nice playable scene. Just to show you that, we're going to add very quickly a few houses to make maybe a small villages. So I'm going to take the same house. I should go away. Yeah, I left the edit mode, so that's cool. So Control V, Control V, Control V. I'm taking the same house, so it's fast. But obviously, you know that we can make much better than this. Maybe we can try to reorient to rotate those houses toward the center like so. Okay, so oops, sorry. You can see that in a matter of seconds we could get a very playable and nice little scenes. Now the last thing I want to show you with the painting is that we can use some custom textures. So I have prepared stone pavement texture that I'm going to use in the first custom channel here. Okay, and from that we can maybe draw a road that will lead to our terrain. So I'm going to make it maybe 6 meters wide. Let's try something like that. Okay, that's not too bad. I forget a small part here. So okay, that's not, I'm not really an artist, but you could see that we can paint pretty much anything we want, and we have a nice small road leading to our village, and that's a really cool playable scene. Now the last thing we have to do obviously for this scene is to add a bit of relief. So let's come back to the hills here. I'm going to choose any one, like this one for example, and let's go back into edit mode, increase the size, and how my 0.3 would be good. So let's put one here. We're going to rotate the texture a bit. We could use of course different texture, but that's not the point here. A smaller one here, and that we're going big on this one, and something like that. Okay, so there we go. You can see that really in a matter of seconds we could get a very convincing and playable area for a small scene. Okay, the last thing I would like to show you is the integration with the dungeons, because it's obviously possible. Naturally the dungeons are still there, so I'm going to destroy completely the terrain here to show you that the dungeons are still there. I just don't show them by default now, but if you activate the dungeon, the good old default scene is still there. So we're not going to need the surroundings, we're just keeping this one here, and start with the default terrain. So you can see that the terrain is actually above the dungeon, so we have the possibility to move the terrain up and down to integrate it to the dungeon, and even left and right to integrate it to the dungeon as we want. So we are going to start by putting the terrain a bit down, and now you can see if I take the brush to sculpt again, or maybe I'm going to choose a different theme for the dungeon because that one is really not beautiful. I mean, it's just simple ground. So let's take a real dungeon, the classic dungeon here. I like it very much. So alright, and so we can try to use this brush here to add a bit more terrain around our dungeon. Okay, so here I'm doing a very poor job, but if you take the time you can get some nicer results. Okay, and you can see that it's possible to integrate our terrain and our dungeon very nicely. So that's a possibility. The other possibility would be to elevate the terrain, so we'll make the opposite move here and dig our way to the dungeon, and so we can make this way a nice, let's put this to the default, a nice underground dungeon. So the dungeon is here. Okay, something like that. Right. So you can see that we can now have a nice underground dungeon. Alright, so I'm going to finish the video by showing you a few jobs that I did, a few saves that I prepared. In in which I did a little bit better job than this one for the integration between dungeon and terrain. So we're going to start, for example, with the Winter High dungeon. So I hope I'm not in the edit mode anymore. No, it's okay. So this is pretty much the same thing I just did, you know, adding a dungeon to a terrain, and then using the leveling tools I made a few cliffs around the dungeon. I did not make a very good job for that one. That's why I'm starting with it. But all in all, it's working for a scene. You can have, you know, this lost mountain dungeon guarded by a dragon and things like that. So pretty nice scene. Anyway, next I can show you the desert town. So this one was made. Oops. This one was made with the leveling tool mainly and the smoothing tool. You can see I just leveled the terrain all around the town, and that you can see my smoothing brush strokes all around the town, and the result is actually very playable and convincing. So we've got a town in the desert here. Next I can show you the jungle temple. So again, it's an the ancient temple dungeon that I have mixed with a rainforest. We have a tiger somewhere that will place as nice. Okay, and you can see that this temple, well, the terrain is still computing far away, but you can see that this old ruin is really fitting well with the rainforest setting here. Okay, so that's another one. Next we have the oasis and ruin in desert, a nice one because it shows you actually two different things. So you can see here we have, by the way, have a look at the desert. At the desert, it's a cellular noise. Well, it's a noise. It's made completely procedurally. So again, you can see how much variety we can get from those voxels. So here you can see we have a bit of ruins nicely blended into the desert. Okay, and next to them we have an oasis, which involves, of course, putting a pond water and make some painting. And you can see that we get a very nice scene here with the oasis and the ruins and so on. So another nice one. And I don't know if I already said, but each of those scenes took me about half an hour of work. All right, something like that. So that gives you an idea. Next we have the space alien base. So obviously this one happened in space, and it's an underground dungeon. As you can see, I made a alien planet terrain all around, and I dig my way into the dungeon. So all in all, at the end we have a nice setup. So there is some work going on this platform here, and then we can go and visit our base. Okay, and obviously we could have a whole adventure in that one. So that's another nice scene. And finally I'm going to show you a small village, a winter village. I added a bit of fog for this one. So again, always the same thing. I used the leveling tool to level. First I started from a small town dungeon village here, then I used the level tool to flatten everything around, and then a bit of smoothing, you know, for the cliffs. And so we get a nice, very nice scene with 3 villagers here. Well, they are warriors, worried, and apparently they have reason to be worried, as you can see here. Okay, so nice little integration. Again, it's about half an hour of work. Maybe I'm going to show you, you know what, without the artifacts here. So let's put everything by default so you can see it okay, with a full light. So there is the village, there is the natural terrain all around. I made a small river here passing by. So all in all, a very nice little thing. Okay, so I think I'm going to end this video here. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and if it's the case, then see you in the next, as always. Thanks, bye.